Okay, hello visual narrative form and time. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about character design. Character design doesn't just exist in fictional visual media. Have you ever noticed that throughout history, the monarchs and rulers have always had the best character design of their whole culture? So that's Queen Elizabeth the First on the far right. And yeah, check out the awesome, amazingly stiff, frilly collar and the double red bouffant for her hair. And that's Emperor Qin Shi Huang in the middle, and he has this amazingly attention-catching yellow robe with blue shoes and curtains for the front and back of his head. And of course, on the left, we have Napoleon Bonaparte with his amazingly dynamic horse posture. And either the horse is extremely small or he's an extremely big dude. So I'll let you guys decide. On a basic primal level, character design ignites our attraction towards the person wearing the shiniest trinkets. This very base function of our brains is what gives way to the pop entertainment and the fashion industry. Old mate Karl Lagerfeld on the right, weight loss champion, and Blackpink, I think this is. But yeah, check out the shiny, attractive outfits on them. There's nothing else I can say about these characters besides what they're wearing right now. But that's the basis of grabbing your attention, and that's the very shallow basis of character design in a way. Similarly, accessorizing becomes the laziest mentality when it comes to character design in commercial comics. It's simply a practice in putting extra things on a heap of lines that define the proportionally accurate bipedal four-limbed head on top of shoulders generic visual representation of humans. So what I mean here is when you say you want to do comics, there's actually a very orthodox way in Western English speaking world for you to learn anatomy, get the correct proportions, draw muscular men, perfectly muscular men for every single character. And then when it comes down to design, it's just putting things in color on this very generic crash dummy. So yeah, that's the commercial Western Marvel and DC as character design there. And yeah, in Japan, in manga, they have a very similar palette system where all the faces kind of look the same, and that's and the hair is the accessory that differentiates each character. I'm not saying this is bad character design. There simply is an effect of diminishing returns when you design characters on a palette, as every other aspect of your comic has to be amazing to make up for how generic everyone looks. Also, there's just huge competition. Like there's in Japan alone, almost every week there's tens and twenties of new mangas coming out competing to be number one. So yeah, it's actually just really hard work for everyone. That's a Yu-Gi-Oh here with their amazing hairstyle. Sometimes generic character designs can have its benefits. Japanese horror manga maestro Junji Ito's normal human characters all almost look exactly the same. Soft, wave-like androgynous teenagers. So yeah, as you can see here, like especially this panel on the right page here, these two characters, they just pretty much have the exact same face, and then yeah, and then in profile you can see that this face here on the right second row panel, and then on the far left bottom left panel it's almost exactly the same as well, almost same skull structure, same eye size, same place where the nose is. The mouth looks exactly the same. But then you realize he has done this so that his characters become a blank slate avatar the readers project themselves, and indeed the whole of humanity's vulnerability onto, to immerse in imagining themselves being put into these outlandish horror situations. Yeah, so he actually really can draw a variety of characters, but he saves the different characters only for the horror aspect. And then, yeah, here on the left, you have a character squeezing his thousands of his face zit and letting the pus drip onto the one of those characters that look exactly the same. Because I think she looks exactly the same because she represents all of normal humanity being messed up by the horror. Swinging hard to the other end of the spectrum, power fantasy, especially in Japanese shonen manga aimed at prepubescent boys, seem to equate the level of a character's power to the size of their erect hair. It is my personal theory that there is a strange correlation to the biological change in first growing pubic hair and having rising testosterone during the years readers are most into Dragon Ball Z. Hair as phallic symbol. So yeah, when you're the age of 9 till 13, I guess that's when a person is the most into Dragon Ball Z. And coincidentally, all the characters turn super strong when their flaccid hair suddenly erects and fire shoots out of it. So yeah, you can come to your own conclusion there. As an aside, Akira Toriyama, the artist and creator of Dragon Ball Z, actually had an amazingly dynamic and varied approach to his character design and art back in the late 70s and early 80s. So yeah, when he first started, he actually started as a commercial illustrator, and he actually was hugely influenced by American pop culture. Like on this page along on the left, you can see that this Clint Eastwood here, and then you have C3PO and R2D2 as the police. But just how dynamic the characters are. Like, look at this character with the super round head and the round body. You don't really see that in his later work. And just this whole amazing barrage of characters with different body shape running around for his early comic called Dr. Slump. So yeah, I guess when you're super popular, you have to industrialize yourself to create the same product over and over again. Where there is generic, there's this anti-generic. One aspect of the alternative comic movement that came from the counterculture movement of the 1960s onward is to move away and subvert the mainstream aesthetics in the popular comics of the time. So yeah, from the 60s counterculture movement, we have the American underground comics movement. And Daniel Clowes, even though he started late around the 80s, is a seminal figure. And this comic called Pussy is quite interesting because he's actually just making fun of the superhero comic industry. And then instead of, showing, like telling the stories of these fictional superheroes, it actually tells the story, very unglamorous story of this comic creator who really loves these superheroes called Dan Pussy. And you can see on the left here, this old character, that's actually a parody of Stan Lee, the Marvel cameo guy. He actually even also parodies and makes fun of the indie comic scene as well. It's quite an interesting, he's an interesting person to look into for alternative comics. And his most famous work is probably the Ghost World movie, which is very ironic because that was Scarlett Johansson's first movie, and it's interesting that she started her first movie in with a indie comic adaptation, but now she's one of the most famous Marvel characters at the same time. And in Japan, around the same time, also in the 60s, there's also a counterculture movement, and there was a publication called Garo magazine that published all of this just bad drawing, deliberately bad drawing manga. And Teruyuki Yamura, aka King Terry, he is a father of this movement called Heta Uma, and Heta Uma translated literally means ugly beautiful. So interestingly, lowbrow appreciation stems from this postmodern ideology, and some commercially successful pop artists have emerged whose portfolios are nothing but esoteric character art. So yeah, pop art started getting really big around the 90s and into the 2000s, especially this generation of lowbrow pop art. And Matt Fury is an example where he is basically a professional character designer whose art consists of all these very colorful characters. Of course, he's really famous for the outright Pepe Frog character. But yeah, that's a whole other story there. But he actually denounced that character and killed him, so he's not involved in all that stuff. And also another person that you guys can look into for inspiration for character design is a guy called Will Sweeney, and he goes by his label. It's called Alakazam. And again, all he does is this amazing character designs. He just comes up with all these amazing looking, crazy looking characters. And yeah, these people actually are quite profitable, and they do a lot of work for pop culture related stuff like skateboards and album design. But enough about million-dollar industry character designs. Let's get personal. That's me, and I design myself as a massive head in a class. One way to jump into character design for a personal story is to just draw a real person you know, a real person, not Vin Diesel, like a family member or a friend. Try to accentuate and capture who they are. Don't just draw their face or upper torso. Take into consideration their posture, the way they walk, the way they talk, what they do and how they fit into the world, your world. Try to draw from real life, not just a photo. When you draw from a photo, no matter how good you are only capturing the microsecond of your subject's entire life. Orthodox celebrity caricatures have this problem. It feels like the subject is just a stylized subject posing for a portrait and not really a character. Like this example here, that's a caricature of Vin Diesel. But it just looks like they took the source from like one of those Hollywood glamour shots, and there's no character behind this figure. It's just a smiling head with exaggerated proportions. So there's no story to him, so to say. Legendary caricaturist Al Hirschfeld is beyond just doing a stylized headshot of his subjects. His caricatures are so outlandish in shape and energetic in line work, they really convey his subjects' character, who they are and what they are about. His character drawings are so strong you can easily imagine a stronger and longer narrative to go with each drawing. So yeah, Al Hirschfeld is probably the most famous caricaturist in the world, and he does his caricatures with these amazingly kinetic, crazy, always changing lines. And he doesn't. One thing you notice is that he doesn't focus his caricatures on someone's face. That's actually, you notice that that's a big thing with normal caricaturists, where they just focus on capturing the face. But Al Hirschfeld really captures what his subject really is about. Like this is Elvis, and he captures Elvis' dance moves just with his lines, and he captures, and you can know the fact that Elvis is a singer just by seeing his facial expression and the way he opens his mouth. It's not just like Vin Diesel smiling at the camera. So yeah, another thing with Al Hirschfeld is that if you watch Fantasia 2000, the Disney animated thing, there's actually a whole short film in it based on his art, and it's quite interesting to check out a whole story, a whole animated film based on his art and how well they pull it off. Don't be pressured to only portray your character in a realistic visual manner. Forget about the bipedal four-limb mess that we are. Make your character a depressed floating octopus in a human world. Don't ever directly explain why you are a floating depressed octopus. Context and happenstatial exposition are two different things. You are a floating octopus because you are depressed and life is too much to untangle, not because a radioactive octopus bit you. So yeah, because comic as a medium is the greatest and cheapest medium to be outlandish without a budget. So why be confined with drawing realistic looking humans all the time? If you want to draw your character as a floating pyramid, just do it. But there are still also, some visual hierarchy and notes to take note. I put this slide here. This is a manga called Omiyasumi Punpun. It's not really a mainstream manga, but I find it interesting in that he renders everything else in the world super realistically. But the main character, this character here, sitting on the bench, is a very self-deprecating, self-hating character that I can definitely figure is a very personal thing for the creator Inio Asano, as in like he's definitely projecting himself, but at the same time he portrays the most important character in the whole narrative in the most ridiculous way with this really weird, childish, naive drawing. And throughout the whole manga, which is like thousands and thousands of pages, it never changes, and it gets really dark. But he still is just this really weird looking naive character, naive drawing of just like really simple lines. Some actual practical character design tips. Visual hierarchy. Always draw attention to your main character. Her or his placement, size, shape, and action should always draw the eyes of the reader, even when placing her or him in an expansive background, unless deliberate obstruction is your intent. So yeah, unless you're really trying to hide your character, especially your main character, always call attention to them. And this is a drawing by Michael DeForge, and as you can see, literally at the top of the hierarchy, the pyramid is the main character, the black deer with the black field in the middle, full colored, contrasting with just line work of the background. And the fact that he's on top of this triangular pyramid with a different color scheme, with a different shape, it really calls your attention to the main subject. And color too. Your main character should always consist of a majority color that is in contrast to the background color. This really draws the attention in context of hierarchy. And on top of the black chunk that he used to call our attention, he uses red for the eye and the book. So yeah, this is a good example of how visual hierarchy works and how your character design plays a part in it. Shape, a traditional recognizable by silhouette rule. Think of what makes a character's silhouette, its shape, proportion, and posture work and recognizable by a single glimpse. Like, I'm pretty sure you guys can name every single character in this just by looking at the silhouette. So on that note, I'm gonna end the video and get into doing some exercises.